Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and in this week's episode, I'm talking with Kim Shapira, who's a dietitian who's written a book that is called This Is What You're Really Hungry For. And we both talk about the notion of restriction and the notion of freedom around food, especially sugar. We'll get to our chat in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. And while you're at aftersugarclub.com, why not take the cravings quiz? I created this cravings quiz specifically to help you start thinking more deeply about what triggers your cravings. And when you do this quiz, you'll get your personalized score as well as my practical tips to help you take your first step to get rid of cravings. Those free resources are at aftersugarclub.com. And also, come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_lifeaftersugar. So I'm here today with Kim. And Kim, first of all, can you tell us about how you grew up with food and sugar in the United States?
Yes, I grew up with a walk-in pantry. It was my favorite room in my house. And me and all my friends would go and sit on the counter in my pantry and have a look at, whatever we had, which was Twinkies and Ding Dongs and cereals and Kudos bars and just an array of snacks. That's how I grew up.
All right. So basically like a normal kid in the States.
A totally normal kid. And in fact, my mom had been restricted and had intentionally not restricted us, which really helped my relationship with food.
Right. And so for your mum, I mean, obviously you can't speak for her, but what was that restriction like for her? Like, how did she perceive restriction? Do you know?
You know what? I think negative and sad. And she spent her entire life doing the opposite of how she was as a child. And it's been a beautiful thing to watch her kind
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what sort of foods did she not have when she was growing up that then you could have?
We had everything. So I am not sure exactly what she couldn't, but we had everything. And there was never any talk of food being good, bad, healthy, or unhealthy. We never called it sweets or desserts. We never sensationalized it. And that has carried on into my practice with all of my clients.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
because we tend to get, all moral about inanimate objects like
yeah.
food.
Yes, and I have 3 daughters, and through my oldest is 21, my youngest is 16. And I will tell you that through the years of raising them and having people over or socializing with their friends, there's been a lot of angry parents that I've, engaged with that don't like that I have everything available in my house
Huh.
as
Yeah.
well,
Why does it make them angry?
because they don't allow it in their home.
Right. And so I asked the question again, why does that make them angry?
Yeah, because I think they see the food as bad. And I see it as when it's available, it's not as important. And
Uh-huh.
so my kids are the kids who would go to a birthday party and wouldn't have a cupcake because they knew that they were at home and they could have them anytime. And this was upsetting to some of the people that I've known.
Yeah, yeah, understandable. And it's the same for me as well. I mean, I cut sugar when my daughter was 7. She's 17 now. And basically I like my mouth is not her mouth, right?
Right. Right.
So I didn't say to her, you're not allowed sugar. You know, as a mum, like you say that to a kid, you've gone and shot yourself in the foot.
I agree. I really agree. Yeah, we've never sensationalized food. And in fact, if any of my kids, when they were very young, had asked for ice cream or cookies, I served it with dinner. And I put it in just the tiniest bowl because it wasn't like they said, I need a cup or a pint. They just said they wanted ice cream. And so they would get a tablespoon right next to the rest of their food. And it wasn't in question. I mean, we're talking about 3 years old, 5 years old, and they were served with a baby spoon, because, what is that, like a sugar spoon for tea?
Mhm.
They were served with that. And like, but I always have all sizes of bowls on my table. So it wasn't strange.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. And I remember doing like a bit of reverse psychology and offering my daughter sweet foods, um, knowing full well that she'd say, no, I don't want any. So to give
Yeah.
her practice in saying no, thank you.
Yes, yes, and also I would take it a step further. When my oldest daughter, we would go to the mall and she would want a pretzel for a snack, and then she would complain of a stomach ache. And instead of saying, "Oh, it's the pretzel," I would say, "I wonder if it's the pretzel. Next time, why don't you try eating a little less and see how you feel?" And then when she still had the stomach ache, she decided it's not worth it to her.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. And these are all like hacks. Like we're not trying to trip our kids up. On the contrary, we come from a place of love, obviously, and of experience with the relationship that we had with food. And I come into contact with a lot of people who believe that they don't have a relationship with food.
Yeah.
But you meet a lot of people who do, right?
Yeah. I mean, I could see how people would, say that to you and respond. And I like to introduce the fact that it is the most important relationship, right? Like we have 37 trillion cells that require our attention on a daily basis. We're getting messages all day long from what our body is telling us, and it's up to us to understand and interpret what our needs are.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not easy to do. Like nobody teaches us this in school, and probably our parents don't because they never knew how to do it. So how are we supposed to know how to do that?
Yeah. I always kind of relate it to having to pee.
What?
It's one of those things where we all like know where our bladder is, but none of us know where our bladder is.
Hmm.
And we're also aware of like when we first get the sensation that we have to use the bathroom, we're not running to the bathroom. We're establishing, our whereabouts, our timing, how we feel, what our emergency is like, and where the closest restroom is in a place of trust.
Hmm.
We've all made it to the toilet, and if we haven't, it's okay too. Sometimes it gets uncomfortable, but in general, we don't wake up in the morning and think, oh my God, I'm going to have to pee 6 times today. Where are those toilets going to be?
Hmm.
This is invisible trust. And we need to come into that same place with food because for most of us, there's food 10 feet away.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of it, except if you aren't allowing yourself to have it.
Yeah, no shortage, that's for sure. Yes. Yeah. And we were taught to pee when we were kids, right? We were
Yeah,
toilet trained, but not really taught to eat in the sense of,
point.
of
Good
what,
point.
yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, like there's a projection that happens. We're projected on from our parents, and our peers and TV and books and whatnot. And sometimes we don't know what's ours and what's theirs.
Can you go like explain that a bit more?
Yeah. So if I were to say to my kids, don't eat this, it hurts your stomach, they're never really getting the chance to explore if that's true or false,
Mm.
right? Just because, like you said, it's your mouth, not your daughter's. And I would even say it's my body, not theirs. It's their journey, not mine. We all have different levels of inflammation at different times and different experiences. And the most important thing is for our people in our life to be able to establish what is theirs versus what is mine.
Wow. Yeah. And that is actually quite high up intellectually, right? As a skill.
Yes, yes. But I do, we've heard about generational healing. We've heard about things being passed down, you know, energies being picked up, conversations, celery juice. As a dietitian, even like I had to think about that one. There's a tipping point. It's very widely popular. Is that a trend or is that like a reality, right? What I've learned versus what is like trending,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
right?
Yes. And sometimes I feel that the whole no sugar thing is a trend, even though I've been doing it for 10 years. I've seen
Yeah.
keto trend come and go. I've seen, and so how can, this is how I see it, right? How can eating food, which is what I call things that are not highly processed, how can that be a trend? I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar.
It's a very good question, but I think you didn't do it because it sounded like a good idea.
No, it
You,
sounded like a terrible idea.
yeah, and you probably needed something to help yourself. And so you were seeking something, and not everybody is seeking something. That's number one. And I will tell you my personal story. I love Chips Ahoy cookies. I love Butterfingers. I love candy. I'm 52. The reality is, after my 16-year-old, I was so tired, um, breastfeeding, eating probably a roll of Oreos to keep my weight on, and having fierce sugar cravings.
Mhm.
And a friend of mine said, I bet it's the sugar you're eating that's causing you to be tired. And I said, absolutely not. I'm best friends with sugar and it loves me and I love it. I'm tired because I have a newborn and my body is, just going through it. But she planted a seed in me. And then I had to kind of explore that. Now, the idea that I wouldn't be eating the things that I love sounded like somebody was choking me,
Mhm.
like somebody was taking away something very important. And I could not think for my life that I would do this long term. So I decided to explore for 1 week as an experiment what it would be like not to eat sugar. And through that, by day two, I was pretty miserable, having searching under rocks, looking in the back of refrigerators for anything that would soothe my withdrawals. By day three, it was a little bit less. By day four, they were completely gone.
Oh.
It was as if sugar and I could coexist, but I didn't need to have it. I couldn't like feel or romanticize what it was like in my mouth. It wasn't as important. And then I started seeing it without the blinders. And I started seeing waxing coatings on things and things I hadn't noticed before. And then days turned into weeks. Now remember, this was only experiment for one, and it just turned into years.
So 1 week turned into years.
1 week turned into years because I stopped needing or missing it. But what happens now is I have it and then I don't. So we are in the habit of doing things pretty much the same as we did the day before. And we sleepwalk through the majority of our day. And we have fierce cravings when we have sugar, right? Nobody wakes up in the morning and thinks, today I'm going to become addicted to heroin. But sure enough, we try it and we are. And that's what happens with sugar. But the more you practice being mindful and aware of your thoughts, or that cake is a good idea as a thought, knowing that you're not really hungry, right, becomes very helpful in being able to say, that's so funny. I don't really need cake right now. I can have cake anytime.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. And so it's an anytime food, but not necessarily an important one anymore.
And isn't it exhausting thinking about these things all the time rather than sleepwalking through your day?
That's a very good point. And that is why people don't want to do it. It's exhausting thinking about it. And I would also say it's exhausting suffering. It's exhausting not feeling well. It's exhausting not choosing yourself. It's exhausting giving the power to another food. But at the same time, if you have been restricted or feel restricted, then eat the sugar, is what I would say, until you're suddenly not wanting to eat the sugar. And then what happens is you slowly don't want it anymore.
Well, that's been my experience and absolutely impossible to imagine before I actually experienced it. And do you get a lot of, like, when you put this to your clients, do you get a lot of resistance?
Yes, and I can completely understand this fear that I'm taking something away because they use it as a security blanket. But, I always kind of quote Buddha says that life is suffering. And my clients don't come to me because they feel great. And so they're going to suffer either if they eat it or they don't eat it. And at some point, they have to go through this experiment to see how they really feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I liken it to falling in love, you know. You can't sort of explain the nuts and bolts of it. You have to live it.
Yeah. Yes, I would agree. It's interesting. There was a study done where they had a very attractive woman on a bridge, a very broken down bridge, and they sent men across this bridge, and it almost felt like they were going to fall through the bridge at any time. And at the end of the experiment, the woman gave every single one of these men her phone number. And the men attributed their anxiety and fear to being attracted, and every one of them called her. And they said they repeated the study on a very safe bridge, and none of the men called the women.
Ah,
Really interesting. So, what we attach is really, really important,
yeah,
and we can change.
we can change. We can change. And what you were saying just before about, you know, needing the comfort that sugar or those types of foods mean for us, like a lot of people that I help, that's the thing that gets them into a tailspin is that if there's not the sugar or the comfort food, there's a black hole. There's literally nothing they can think of to replace it.
Oh, I would say it's an opportunity, right? So, like, where is the lacking coming from? And I like to think about like what I used to like to do when I was younger, when I was like a really young kid, and how I used to like to play. And of course, it was as a teacher because I still get to teach, it's just not in a classroom, right? And so, any way that I can go back to how I used to play is very important to bringing in to how you should be playing now as an adult.
Mm.
And I think we need to use our imagination and element of play as an opportunity to really, that black hole needs to just be filled with things that fill you, that don't like hurt you.
Agreed. Yeah, totally. And usually it's the same for, you know, well, what am I going to eat if I don't eat things that I've always eaten, you know? And it's not that there's not the foods out there, it's usually I found that people just don't have any ideas, no inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah. But they've never tapped into that part of their brain. And so, again, this is an opportunity. I mean, the idea that a 15 and a half-year-old in the United States is going to drive a car, you know, you basically hand a key over and you say, now go. That's terrifying to be on this busy road with honking. And like, that's why you practice, right? What's really interesting is that every one of us drives a car the exact same way. We open it with the left hand, we sit down, we put our seatbelt on, we put our foot on the brake, we look in the rear view mirror, we shift the gears, and we go. We've practiced. It's so like we're sleepwalking. And so now we have to just practice a new behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. I teach that in my program as the concept of automaticity.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And it's fun and exciting. Of course, it seems challenging, and our brain does not want us to do anything hard, which is why we fight it, but it's not hard.
Yeah, gosh. And especially when you've got, a bit of guidance.
Yeah.
And is that what you give in your book?
Yeah. My book is really about healing your relationship with food. I think the title is called This Is What You're Really Hungry For. And I think what people are really hungry for, that black hole, that opportunity, is peace.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
really like I say often that the relationship that I have now with sugar, I wouldn't say food because I don't consider sugar is a food. Not that it's bad, it's just not in that definition. But the relationship that I have with sugar is peaceful, it's neutral. I don't demonize it, I just, quite frankly, I don't care.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, but I do want to challenge you on one thing. To somebody who has been restricting and doesn't feel safe around food, I would say that when we start introducing new foods, and I will call them foods like ice cream or cakes, these have, calcium, and they, can give you eggs, which have different vitamins and minerals. So I wouldn't rule it all out. And I do think that it's just a bridge to help you get to like the next place, but not all foods, hurt us at the same way. And it really depends. I mean, most of these noxious chemicals that are in a lot of these things, depending on the rest of your diet, don't negatively affect you or shouldn't
Yeah.
negatively affect you, especially when everything is in moderation.
Yeah, yeah. And for someone like me, I can't moderate sugar, so I'm better off just not eating any.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think a lot of people would agree with you. And I think that also is an opportunity to see what moderation feels like and looks like in some ways, right?
Yeah,
You know,
totally,
yeah,
totally. Because we're not all the same, thank goodness.
we're not all the same, but we're all, on a journey to, understand ourselves a little better.
Yeah, totally. Lovely. And tell me, if someone wants to get your book, how can they do that?
My book is available everywhere, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, anywhere that books are sold, you can find my book. Um, and on my website, and basically anywhere, everywhere.
Okay, smashing. Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear, this open-mindedness, because sometimes when we grow up in the diet culture, we get told, do this, do that, don't eat this, eat that. And it's like we're treated like children. So I thank you for speaking to us as if we were adults.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. What a great conversation with Kim. And her book, This Is What You're Really Hungry For, is about the 6 simple rules to transform your relationship with food, including sugar, to become your healthiest self. That's what Kim's book is called. And in her 6 rules, this is how she breaks down the science to get your brain and your body on board and replace that diet mentality that we were talking about. And it's so lovely to talk to like-minded people like Kim who encourage us to eat what we love without jumping to the conclusion that this necessarily has to include sugar. And this open-minded approach that leaves you room for your agency, or what I call your personal power, is the exact approach in my 12-week program, the Freedom from Cravings Formula. Because I created this program specifically to help you go deeper into your relationship with sugar and flour so that you can finally get rid of cravings, slim down, and feel more in control around food, especially sugar and flour. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed to help you get control over cravings so that you can finally live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly and feel confident in your food choices so that you can ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never feel like you're on some kind of restrictive diet. If you're at the stage of your life when you're finally ready to look after yourself, let's chat. You can talk directly to me on a free clarity call at any time by going to aftersugarclub.com and clicking on Program at the top. You'll also find the link with the show notes together with this episode. So go to aftersugarclub.com. Speak to you soon. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.